Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Season 2 of Cohort W. I'm your host and current Warrant Officer Historical Foundation Fellow, CW5 Leonard Momini. In today's episode, my incredible guest will share some personal and professional experience, mentorship, and insight as a senior warrant officer in the U.S. Army. The senior warrant officer will then examine how their insight should ultimately influence action, development, and education within the greater cohort. The conversation this season is directed at leader development, talent management, and what the senior warrant officer is doing to support the Army for large-scale combat operations. Finally, all Cohort W guests will have an opportunity to share a favorite anecdote from their career as a senior warrant officer. Today, I am joined by the Deputy Commandant of the United States Army Warrant Officer Career College. Thanks so much for your time today, sir.
Thank you. Good morning.
Can you share with the audience a little bit about yourself?
Hey, yes, absolutely. So my name is CW5 Julian Evans III. I am married. I have a few children, a couple of grandchildren. I love to golf. I love to exercise, sandy beaches, and just nature in general. I've been in the Army about 28 years, and I've been a warrant officer for 20 years.
So, sir, what is your MOS title, and then also your current duty position?
Yes, I'm an electronic missile weapons system technician, the moniker 948 Echo. I am the Deputy Commandant of the United States Army Warrant Officer Career College.
Well, your daily work as the Deputy Commandant, what does that involve? And how does that work serve to the betterment and support of the Warrant Officer Cohort and the Army as a whole?
Leonard, I definitely appreciate that question. And just really to put it in context, as the Deputy Commandant, I really monitor the acculturation of our newly assessed warrant officer candidates. And I serve as the key stakeholder for improving those mid-grade and those senior grade officers as they matriculate through our education and training system. WOCC is the flagship for Warrant Officer PME, and our learners broaden their knowledge, skills, and behaviors through a systematic learning experience and connects with their operational assignments. So as it becomes apparent in our Army, the warrant officer is important. And so that education that we provide to the cohort is important as well.
So what are some of the specific initiatives or focal points regarding leader development and talent management that you would like to communicate to the warrant officers in the cohort?
Yes, I definitely want to just really focus on that, the former part of that, leader development. And so our focus at the career college is really the leader development. And so as we look at the initiatives on the horizon, the modernization of Warrant Officer PME is truly the precursor for Army Transformation 2035. The idea there is with the shift in the direction of where the Army is trying to go, if we don't change, we become ineffective and irrelevant. And so that Warrant Officer PME modernization really gets after building an education system and a learning continuum so we are more agile, flexible, and relevant in order to employ our KSBs in a tactical or technical situation that meets the Army's demand as we get closer to the initiative of Army Transformation 2035.
And I'm curious, and I'm sure they are too, the listeners are too. How do these initiatives and focal points all start to coalesce in education and training, specifically with large-scale combat operations and multi-domain operations?
Yes, I think this is probably This is a very great question. And so just to really put it in context, as we look at our COIN environment, which we've prepared for several years, our previous insurgencies largely took place in rural areas. However, with the trends of growing populations and urbanization, the relevancy of COIN remains. However, with the technological revolution and information age, our non-state actors has an increasing ability to conduct multi-domain operations and a complex urbanized irregular warfare. So ultimately, this will change how we fight and the composition of our forces, thus requiring a forced change of how we educate and train our warrant officers. So our classroom becomes really the pseudo think tank where our student learners can bring in a problem, and we can use certain things like ADM, MDMP, .MILPF to really help them understand how to solve the problem and to contextualize how we need to look at the problem as we think about LISCO and multi-domain operation.
Now, what education or training, and be it technical or Common Core, do you see as being relevant and impactful to the development of the warrant officer? And can you explain why you feel this way?
Yeah, so absolutely. And just to conceptualize this a little better, there's really three things that comes to mind as I look at the Army transformation and whether technical or Common Core, what's important, how do we employ it, what's our approach. So there's three things that really jumps out, and it's our requirements. What are our needs? Secondly, hey, do we have the right complement of MOS's branch support to really get after the mission that's at hand? So we need to look at divestiture of people and equipment. And then thirdly, the technological advancements. Those are really the three drivers that's really driving the education and training requirements. So as warrant officer leaders, we need to continue to improve our KSBs through the operational institution and the self-development domain. And so for USAWOC, our focus is really on that Common Core. So as we look at the Army learning areas of leadership and in the Army profession, mission, command, operations, and training, we really try to put things in those categories. So as our student learner comes through our programs and our course offerings, we're able to give them something that's relevant and impactful so they can take back to their operational formations and employ this newly found or broad knowledge in order to help their organizations and their leaders out.
Do you see the role of the Army warrant officer changing as our Army transforms to meet the challenges of Army 2035?
I love this question because today when we look at the warrant officer really has various roles and really twofold. They're utilized in a hybrid role or utility role. And I think that really gets after the Army utilizing them to accomplish the mission. But as we transform toward this 2035 transformation, I think we need the roles will get back to the roots of who we are, being more specialized. So if we look at things like multi-domain operations in LISCO, the warrant officer role needs to be very specific. So as we improve upon those responsibilities, I think we'll be more effective in those warfighting function in those spaces and places, the operational environment in which we will have to we'll have conflict and we'll have to do the Army's mission.
What sort of challenges do you see for the Warrant Officer Cohort during this transformation?
Getting it right. And so I preface with that statement by saying we have to ensure that as we forecast and look at our sessions goals and targets, that it's not about ones and zeros, but that it is more linked to the talent and measured against our modernization efforts. So as we create our needs against the available pool, we need to stay on pace with variable change. And so the biggest challenge is do we have the right available pool? Do we have the agility and flexibility to shift? And that may mean for a period of time we may not cess a certain MOS group, so then they can be the bill pair to improve and to accelerate a different MOS and a different formation. So as these formations will change in transformation, I think it's going to be very very particular of how we assess, but the challenges therein changing formations are great.
As the Deputy Commandant of WOCC, what is your role in ensuring the Warrant Officer Cohort is prepared to advise and help ensure the success of their commanders in the future?
First and foremost, it's our position is to ensure that education is timely and made available to our student leaders. We need to model their education offerings representative of their assignments in their KSBs. And so as we look at how our student leaders can help their commands, the complexity of having 17 branches and a litany of MOS makes it really hard to really box in and to make a single point of how we need to approach our education and training. But if we can get after the timely education, the relevancy of the education as we bring them into the classroom, I think we'll have the opportunity to prepare them to go back to their commands and help out their commands and their organizations in that leader advisor role that's inherent to the warrant officer.
What would you say to a CW3 or even a CW4 that is somewhere in the ranks today and aspires to someday rise to the position that you currently hold?
Yeah, so right off the bat, broaden your Army knowledge beyond the status quo of your MOS and the assignments that you have. Really embrace the genre of educational opportunities and improve professionally and personally. Truly become a lifelong learner in every facet of Army doctrine, policy, strategies, plans, and operations. These will broaden their understanding of the 17 branches in the litany of MOSs. So because USAWOC deals with MOS in material, if this is the job that they aspire, you really have to understand the Army at large.
It has been said that experience is the best teacher. Now, as both a CW5 and senior warrant officer, especially one serving in such a visible position, you've probably experienced your fair of success and even failure. What sort of success or failure have you learned the most from?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in my career, I've been very fortunate to have a diversity of assignments and positions. I think this has broadened my perspective on looking at the Army enterprise at large. I found a lot of success through the ecosystem of explicit and tacit knowledge gained through experience in those assignments. Me personally, I am very intentional about learning what I do not know. There's a book, as I think about the question, that I think is very valid in this point. Book called Atomic Habits, and there's a point in premise that says goals are about results. That you want to achieve, but we need to build systems of processes that leads to those results. So I'm always looking at not just meeting the next goal, but building the right system to improve upon those strengths and weaknesses. So when it comes to failure, recognizing whatever those blind spots are and improving upon those so you can be more agile and and you can be more broad to help your organization.
Do you have an interesting or formative anecdote from your career that you would like to share with the audience? Perhaps it's funny, inspirational, but it influenced your development as both an officer and a senior warrant officer.
Yeah, I have one, and this is this is one that has really shaped my career. And I'll start off with the quote. There was a battalion XO I had, and his quote to me is his very statement, very, very deliberate statement. He said, no matter how great your stats are, your sum total will represent the team. And so here it is. I'm a young W-2 aspiring to be something great. But I was more about being selfish, more about being focused on how readiness looked and about getting the numbers. So I was less capable of dealing with some of those junior leaders. I was more about making them look bad, and not intentionally, but that was just the result of me grooming and growing into my warrant officer role. But he told me if I spent more time cultivating the teammates around me versus making them look bad, then I could improve everyone's readiness. And it was in this moment that I learned humility had more influence than arrogance. And so I would offer to this audience, humility definitely has more influence than arrogance. But as an individual, especially a technician, a warrant officer, we need to do more reading, listening, and watching things that will help us improve. And so if I had to leave anything of point to improve our cohort, it would be we need to improve in every facet, genre of learning that we can to improve the cohort.
It has been so great to hear senior warrant officer talk both doctrine and share mentorship with those they seek to serve. Thank you so much for your time and sharing how a senior warrant officer's leadership in not just the branch, but the cohort can ultimately contribute to meet the doctrinal requirements for both the current and future fight. I would also like to thank everyone for listening. For updates on Cohort W and the Warrant Officer Historical Foundation, please follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Simply search for at WOHF 1918 or simply search Warrant Officer Historical Foundation. Finally, to learn more about how you can support programs like this, please visit warrantofficerhistory.org.
Cohort